Okay, here's chapter 4.
Yes.
Writing equations in slope-intercept form. Okay, so one of the things that we've already talked about is y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept value. So I'm going to write those down so that you guys remember them. Okay, you got to remember these letters in the format that it's in. Okay, so now some of these are really pretty easy. Okay, so the first example would be if I gave you a slope number of, say, 5, and I tell you the y-intercept is equal to, say, -2, how would I write an equation for that? Well, I simply take these numbers and I plug them in for m and for b. So this would be y equals 5x minus 2. Now, you do not have to put the plus there, but if you do, it's not wrong. It's just you just generally don't see it like that. So if you write it as 5x plus a -2, it's a little odd, but you generally don't see that. Normally, if it's a plus sign, like if I would have said this was a +2, you just would have wrote plus 2. But since the y-intercept was -2, y equals 5x minus 2. Okay, so now let's take a look at something like this. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. And now I'm going to give you a picture of a graph. Okay, so let's say we have a picture of a graph that looks like this, and I'm going to come up with some points. Okay, so there's a 1 point that's listed here, and we're going to have another point that's listed down here. Okay, and I'm going to tell you where these points are. This one's going to be at 4, 2, and the second one's going to be down here at 0, -2, so it's going to look like that. Okay, so now what we have to figure out here is how can we write an equation based on what's listed here? All right, now think about, we have a person that's down here on the bottom left-hand part of the line, and they're going to be walking up the hill. So I know right now that the slope is positive because they're walking uphill, but I don't know exactly how much they're going to be walking. So here's what I'm going to be doing. I need to figure out what the slope is. So we are going to count from this point to this point. So I'm going to take another colored pen, take a red pen, and we're going to do this. We're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 units. And of course, that pen doesn't work. So I had to go up 4 units up. And then I have to figure out how far over I went. Well, I went over 1, 2, 3, 4 to get to that second point. So my slope number, remember that slope is simply rise over run. So I rise up 4, run to the right 4. And if I simplify that, I get a slope answer of 1. Okay, so this is going to be y equals 1x. And then I don't know if this thing froze. Okay, then we get y equals 1x plus the unknown b value. Okay, so now it looks like this thing froze and then it unfroze. So, and now to figure out what the y-intercept is, take a look at the picture that we have that's here. It looks like it crosses at -2. Okay, that's where the y-intercept is. So this would be y equals 1x minus 2. Okay, so now that should be one of the examples. Here's one of them where you actually know exactly where it's going to cross. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but I'm going to give you a different one with a negative slope. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. And this is what the picture is going to look like. Crosses down here at 0, -1. And the second point is going to cross at 3, -2. So the graph kind of looks like this. Okay. I think I'm figuring out how to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so now here's our point, and this guy's going to be at 0, -1. Okay, so now we need to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So we already know that this is the equation that we're looking for. And we have 2 points on the line. Well, if it says it crosses at 0, -1, that means we already know what B is, because we're looking right away, the y-intercept, where is it? Well, when we did it the last time, it crossed at -2. We knew that the y-intercept was -2. That's where we put that there. Now we know what it is. It's going to be -1. So I'm going to plug in a -1 for B, but we do not know M yet. So what we have to do is we have to draw or try to figure out how far this person has to go down the hill. Okay, the slope we know will be negative because the person is walking down the hill. You put a person on the left-hand side, just like we did here. Left-hand side, positive slope. We went up 4 and right 4. But on this one, we got to figure out how to go from this point down to this point. So it looks like we're going down 1, and then it looks like we're going to the right 3. Slope is equivalent to rise over run, which is -1/3. So that's going to be what our slope number is. Okay, that should be your example for this one. Okay, now what happens? Okay, so let's we got a couple examples where there are pictures. But what if we don't have a picture? What if I just give you some points and we have to see if we can figure out what the equation would be? So that's what example 4 looks like. So what if I gave you one that looks like this? Write an equation of the line that passes through the given points. Okay, so let's say I gave you one that looks like this. Okay, we've got 1 point and we have a second point. All right, so we need to figure out when it says equation of the line. If you ever see these words, equation of the line, I instantly want you to write this down because that's exactly what they're talking about. Y equals mx plus b. So if you see the words slope-intercept form, write that down. If you see the words equation of the line, also write it down. They mean the same thing. Okay, now looking at your values, I can tell you that this value right here is the y-intercept, because the definition of an intercept is where it crosses the axis. Well, it's telling you that x is 0, and 0, -6 means it doesn't go left or right, and it only goes down. So that's the value of the y-intercept to start with. So I'm going to write this equation, and I'm going to put in a -6 for b, based off of this point. It's just like what happened when we did this one over here, and we knew it crossed at 0, -1 because it told us. That's why this was -1. And when we did this one, it was at 0, -2. That's why we also had -2. All right, so now when we go back to this one, you may remember there was a formula that I gave you guys to find slope. And it looks like this. It was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the first little guy here is an x1. The second little point is a y1. This is an x2. This one's a y2. Okay, this is the first coordinates, x and y, both x1, y1. And the second one, x2, y2. So now we're going to take these numbers, we're going to plug them in. Well, y2 is 9. So I'm going to plug that in place of y2. y1 was -6. Now notice there was a negative here. So that means that there was a negative in this one. You're going to get double negatives. x2 is 3 minus x1, which is 0. Well, when you have the two negatives next to each other, the middle school thing was you make them into positives. You make a little smiley face. There's the eyes and the mouth. And 9 plus a +6 makes 15. And 3 minus 0 makes 3. And when I simplify that, I get a slope number of 5. So that is my equation. Y equals 5x minus 6. Okay, so that was example 4A. Now, these are a lot of the same examples that I gave you guys if you go to Google Classroom and you take a look at your the notes that I put on there. So let's try another one. So it's the same example. I'm going to make up some numbers this time, and I'm going to say that it crosses through 0, negative 4. Okay, and we want to find the equation of the line. Okay, so now, since it said equation of the line, which is this one, all right, my thing freezes every once in a while. This is a new program I've never used before, so let's see if I can zoom it in. Okay, there we go. Okay, so based off of this, you see equation of the line, we're going to use y equals mx plus b. Okay, anytime you see that, just write that down. Now, do these points, do they have a given y-intercept? The answer is yes. Since the x is 0, the y is negative 4. So we're going to plug that directly in for the m. So it looks like that. Okay, now I'm going to write this as the first x and the first y. And this guy is the second x and the second y. So here is your formula to find the slope. The y2 point, which is this one, is given as negative 4. So I'm going to plug the negative 4 in. There's a minus in the middle, which goes here. And then the y point is a negative 3. So I'm going to plug that in. Divided by these two values. Well, the x2 is a 0 minus the x1 value, which makes a 5, which goes here. So now when I go through to simplify this, now remember I made this up, so sometimes they come out pretty, sometimes they don't. The two negatives right next to each other change to positives. There's my little smiley face. And we get negative 4 plus a positive 3, which comes together to make negative 1. In the denominator, 0 minus 5 makes negative 5. When I simplify those, I get an answer of 1/5. So this makes y equals, this is the slope value, which is 1/5, and the y-intercept is -4. Now, all the problems that we've done for examples so far have all been relatively nice, because notice that I've given you a y-intercept for all of them. And in section 4.1, all of them will be like that for the most part. We're going to do some ones where there is no y-intercept and how we solve those in a little bit. Okay, so here's example 5. We only got a couple left for your notes. Okay, write a linear function f with the values f of 0 equals -4 and f of 3 equals 8. Okay, now this is written a little bit differently than what we had before. Okay, that was prior. Okay, so normally they're given as points. Now we've done them as points, we've done them as graphs. Now I'm giving them to you as functions, and you have to figure out what these mean, and can you take these and make them look like this? Well, let's try it. Now remember that when this says f of 0, this is kind of like saying, what is f of x? Well, this number, these numbers that are here are both your x terms. So this guy would be your x term, which is 0, and then your y term, the answer that it generates, will generate a -4. So anytime you see it written in function notation like this, whatever value's in the parentheses is going to be the x value. The thing that it's equivalent to will be your y value. That's your -4. So now if we go to the next one, this one will be listed as 3, 8. Okay, so now let's do the same thing we did on these prior problems, which looks like this. And we are going to find, first we have to find what the y-intercept is. And we want to do y equals mx plus b. It says write a linear function. Linear function, boom, right here. So if you guys see equation of the line, linear function, you see slope-intercept form. Pretty much everything you see when it talks about anything linear, lines, anything, it's going to be this. Well, the y-intercept is given. It's right here. The y-intercept is -4. It's given. So right now, I am going to plug in a -4 in for the b. I don't know m yet. So I'm going to take this, and this is my formula for slope when I have 2 points, just like we had in example 4b, which is the same one I had up here. So we're going to take all these numbers and we're going to plug them in. The y2 value is 8 minus the y1 value, which is -4, divided by the x2 number, which is 3, minus the x1 number, which is 0. Well, the denominator is pretty easy. That makes 3. On the numerator, it has those 2 negative things again. Okay, the opposite of a negative changes both of them to a positive. Make your little smiley face if you'd like. And 8 plus +4 makes 12. So to simplify that value, 12 over 3 should make 4, which is my slope. M is 4. So I go back and I plug it into here. That's my equation of the line. We just wrote a linear function that makes that true. Now, just to show you that this is true, and I just didn't make some crazy stuff up, this is telling me that, remember when it says the function of x or the function of 0 makes -4? If I took 0 and I plugged it back into here for x, it should give me a value of -4. Let's check it. 4 times 0 minus 4. Well, anything times 0 makes 0. That makes -4. So check. It also is telling me when I plug in a 3, it's going to generate an 8. So let's go back into this one. I'll write it over here. And let's plug in a 3. 4 times 3 minus 4. Well, this makes 12 minus 4, which is also 8. Which generates my next answer. Okay, guys, I will see you next week. We have... this should help you guys with your homework.